All right. We are now live. I do want to thank you all for visiting Miss yours truly, Miss Anita. And today I have a very special guest, a very dear friend. Her name is Miss Etta Caver. And I want to share with you a little bit. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about the ins and outs. It's one thing to get into a relationship because of someone you're really in love with, but what if things go bad? What if it starts getting verbally abusive? What if it goes even further and get physically violent? So today Miss Caver is going to share with you. She just to share a little bit with you about Etta. She works with people in relationships, of course. She works as an advisor, a counselor, and an advocate for victims of domestic violence. And of course, she's also currently working uh, towards her PhD dissertation. I'm going to let her share more about her career, how she got started, and what she does. And hopefully, this may be helpful to someone out here who is listening. All right. So, again, my special guest and dear friend, Miss Etta Caver.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Etta Caver. I am a counselor, advisor. I work with women, especially women, as a focus group of victims of domestic violence. I started my career back in 2001. I had previously worked in IT for IBM at AK Steel in Middletown. And at the age of 47, I decided to change my career and retired from Armco and IBM to pursue something. I didn't know at the time what it was. I entered Miami University in the state of Ohio at 47 years old. Yeah, 47. I entered college.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And very persistent, I might add.
Yes, very persistent. I had to be. My time was became very precious because of my age, and I wanted to do some things, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do until I entered college, and
Yeah.
found out that I wanted to do social work, which is a
All right.
drastic change from computer technology. So I entered the School of Social Work and Family Science, and my first class, my first textbook in social work was a story about a woman who was crouched in the corner with her two kids, a son and a daughter, trying to dial 911 for help because her husband was physically beating her. And I realized at that time that's what I wanted to do. And one of the reasons I realized that is because I was a victim of domestic violence. And it just touched my heart at that moment that for the rest of my life, I wanted to help women that were involved in domestic violence because I had no help when I was a victim of domestic violence. So I continued to do all I could as far as learning about domestic violence. I was actually invited to join a group called Citizens Against Domestic Violence and became a public speaker uh, for years and still am. But when I graduated from Miami University in 2005, I graduated with the Distinguished Presidential Award because of the work I had begun with victims of domestic violence. I actually started a class to educate victims of domestic violence in the state of Ohio. I talked about the laws that are implemented in our state to protect victims of domestic violence, and one of those laws is called Amy's Law. There's different laws for different states, but in the state of Ohio, it's Amy's Law. And I continue to pursue um, learning more about domestic violence. I began to work on my master's at the University of Cincinnati. And
Okay.
again, along the way, I continued to receive awards for the work that I've done and began as far as talking to victims of domestic violence, being an outspoken person of my own personal testimony of domestic violence.
That's
And
why I just your conferences. Yeah, I've had a chance. You invited me to a few, so yeah, they're very good, and I think it's been very effective. Talking to the women
Hmm.
at there. So yeah.
And now I'm pursuing my PhD. I'm PhD ABD, which means PhD of a dissertation. So I'm working on my dissertation now. Some of the questions that I'm asked as an advisor and of relationships is, when do I know when the relationship is not going good? Well, first of all, when you enter a relationship, you should know from the beginning if that person says, I love you on the first day that you meet, that's not a good sign. We should learn to love from the inside out, and you can't understand and know a person from the inside out the first day you meet them. So, if you meet somebody and you feel like, oh, this is love at first sight, I don't know if it's such a thing as love as at first sight. You might be in love
Yeah.
with what you see, but true love is from the inside out. So, a red
And true
flag
love develops,
do
I
true
think.
love develops, and
Yeah.
nothing is developed on the first night,
Right.
that or first day that you meet someone. So if someone tells you on the first day that they're in love with you, then that's a red flag. If someone continues to call you and text you and say I love you after meeting them for the first time, that's another red flag. Sometime, especially with younger adults, that's impressive. You meet someone and they tell you, I love you. You're the best thing I ever had in my life. You're, the most beautiful person I've ever seen in my life. Sometimes those are red flags. And we should be cautious when we enter an intimate relationship. Um, Cautious because that person has probably lived 20 plus years prior to the time that you met them. So knowing them on the first date is basically impossible. Another thing that people ask is, well, how would I know if that person has been violent in another relationship? Ask somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, ask, talk to
But,
people that know
but
that person. Hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Etta. Can I enter? I just wanted to ask because some people have been in relationships for a long period of time. I mean, we got people out here who are married that may be experiencing domestic violence,
Hmm.
and maybe a lot of times maybe you don't always see the signs. I mean, it might not have been a situation where they told you they loved you on the first date. It might just been a relationship that's been building up, and you guys have developed. Not a friendship, but a love relationship,
Hmm.
and then it goes in a different direction. So I guess because I mean, you deal with married ladies as well as single women who have been in relationships. But some of these relationships are long term,
Hmm.
so I don't know. Trying to figure out what kind of question I'm trying to
Well,
ask. But you
what you
said,
said so far is vital. People have been in relationships for a long time before any kind of violence appears in that relationship. And the violence can be verbal, sexual, physical, financial. There's a lot of types of abuse. Abuse is abnormal use of. So, yes, couples can be together for many years before any abuse appears in their relationship.
but
As a
how
matter of
can it
fact,
be abusive financial though? How I don't understand that.
when someone controls all the money in a
Oh,
relationship, and well, it's two people basically in a relationship. One person controls all the finances, all the money, and the other person has no clue of what, you know, finances, how much money's in the bank, none of the financial aspects of a relationship. Then that person that's, totally uh, out of the loop as far as the uh, money is concerned. That person is basically being abused.
okay.
With
So it's
Amy's,
about control. It's
It's
about control, right?
domestic violence is about control and power, power and control in a relationship. The person that's controlling the other person is the person that's the aggressor or the abuser. The person that's receiving all the abuse is the victim. So basically, in relationships, those things can be used as far as the physical abuse, the psychological abuse, the financial abuse, the sexual abuse. Those are things that are used to control a partner in a violent relationship.
But
Yes,
you work with men too
yes.
who are the abusers. I guess the question I want to ask, don't they know? Are they aware?
Uh,
I don't know.
as abusers, some do, some don't. Unfortunately, people or children grow up in homes where their parents are abuser, either the mother abusing the father, father abuse the mother. Kids grow up in a home like that. It is a learned behavior. And then the kids become abusive to their partners, and some are not aware. I've had male clients who actually thought that it was an inherited trait. No, abuse is a learned behavior, and
Wow.
it can be generational. That's how it perpetuates itself. Even in COVID, when we were stuck in the house, domestic violence actually escalated in the state of Ohio 50%. And some of the
Oh my
statistics,
gosh. Oh
yeah,
my goodness. That's high.
yeah, it is high. And
That's
I went
scary.
to a conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was stated at the conference that it will probably continue to escalate for the next 2 or 3 years before it starts to dissipate. So, domestic violence has always been a problem in the United States of America because of the way women were looked at before the 1900s. We were basically looked at as property, property of men. And over the years, laws have been able to change to help protect women. So women are still in process of fighting for rights and being treated more like equals versus property. Uh, One of the things that I learned in doing this is one of the statements that we use all the time and may not know the true meaning of is rule of thumb. Well, rule of thumb actually meant years ago in the early 1900s that a man could beat his wife with a stick as long as it was not wider than the width of his thumb. I was actually
Wow.
shocked when I heard that and read that because we just use that statement as a matter of fact. You know, rule of thumb is, but the rule of thumb is actually a rule, and it was used in the early 1900s that a man could beat his wife with a stick that was not wider than the width of his thumb. And one of the judges that was used that pretty much when a man was arrested for beating his wife was a judge that they actually called the thumb judge.
Wow.
But things have changed since then, you know. But the thing about domestic violence is basically something that happened behind closed doors. So until the doors are open and voices are heard, a lot of people don't know that, you know, certain people are involved in domestic violence, and it can be
But
men as well as women.
can a person change though? I mean, I know you work on both sides of the fence, so to speak.
Hmm.
You work with men. Do you think a lot of it is dealing? Well, I know you said is what you grew up in your environment, but do you can a person they can change though if they want to? You have to want to change though.
Yes. Well,
Do you?
yes, that's true. When I became a victim of domestic violence, I had never heard of it. I wasn't brought up in that environment, but became a victim because I didn't understand domestic violence. What the first time my ex-husband hit me, I thought it was a fluke. I thought he'd never do it again. It is a cyclic event. If it happens once, it will happen again. The time between the events might vary. It might be a month or so. It might be a year, but it will continue. If your spouse hits you once um, after an argument or during an argument, the cycle is the arguments usually bring about the physical abuse.
Yeah.
After the physical abuse, something normally happens. Either someone may get arrested, victim may try to find safety, and after some distance between the event, most likely the abuser will begin to apologize to the victim. The victim begins to believe the apologies and that it will never happen again. The couple gets back together. That's called a honeymoon phase, only for
Yeah.
the cycle to start again. Then there's the argument. Then there's the physical abuse. Threats happen. I'll kill you if you leave me. Um, Different threats like that. And then, like I said, then there's the honeymoon phase when the promises are made, the victim believes them, and this starts all over again.
I think when I hear that, so to me, it's dealing with a lot of anger. It's not controlled anger. If you get to the place, and I'm not saying that we as women cannot say things to provoke anger, but it should never get to the place where a person is putting their hands on you, or it should never get to the place where you're being cursed out, or like you said, verbal abuse.
Yeah. Some things are said on both sides, men and women, maybe to provoke some type of action. But the thing is that a lot of times when that happens is because someone has been hurt. Anger actually stems from being hurt. For example, in my lifetime, actually, as a child, my mother was a victim of a homicide. I was 15 years old when I found her body in our front yard. Um, and I became angry because I was hurt. And I became angry because of what someone did to me. They took away something from me that can never, ever be replaced. So
And
I became,
traumatized. I'm
I
sure you
was
were
traumatized.
traumatized too
Oh,
with some of this
of course,
too.
it was a hideous time in our lives. It was
Right.
tumultuous, and I was hurt, but that hurt began to turn into anger, and the anger was toward the people who actually murdered my mom, and that's the root of anger. We all have the emotion anger, but it's how we utilize it. But
Right.
a lot of the aggressive anger comes from being hurt, but we don't realize that. We just know I'm angry
Right.
and I'm going to get after the person who made me angry. And then sometimes we're saying, in saying that, I'm going to go after the person that hurt me. So it can be a man or a woman. And most likely, if we lean towards statistics, 75 to 85% of victims are women. That leaves 15 to 50, or 25% of victims being men um, in domestic
So
violence.
there are some men that can be victimized too, then is what you're saying, right? There are
Absolutely.
men out there that's being victimized by women.
Yes. Women can be
Okay.
violent, women can be angry, and women can do things that will be hurtful toward their partner. Yes. We cannot eliminate women from being angry because they can become angry and violent. Also, men, as victims of domestic violence, have a tendency not to run toward shelters or run towards someone who can help them in the situation. Most likely, men will just leave the situation and move on
Yeah.
in their lives. Women basically are looking for shelter because if they have children, most likely the women will have the children with them. And women should seek some type of safety,
Yeah.
and especially if they have children. And there are safe houses in all states. There's a hotline that can be acquired from Googling, um, trying to find help for domestic violence victims. It's a national hotline that will direct you toward safety in your state, in your area.
Oh, that's good. Very
Mhm.
good. And then again, going back over again, like what are some of the things that while it's one thing to be dating someone or you're not married to them, hopefully you can get out a little bit faster, but when you're in a marriage it's hard to get out. But going back to the signs, what's some of the things that they need to be looking for? And another question I want to ask you, and I'm sorry because it's all coming to me at once, so sorry
Mhm.
about that. What's a plan for a woman? You just don't get out. Sometimes you just can't. Well, I'm out of here. You don't want to do that. So, but first of all, what are some of the signs when you're in a marriage that you need to be looking for? Or, like you said, finance. I didn't even think about that. They're controlling the money, so they, that was a. I mean, that was a light bulb moment. Like, well, I forgot about the money situation. I'm always thinking verbal, sexual, and physical, but I didn't think about finance. So
Mhm.
that was insightful. But yeah, I'm sorry. I'll let you take it.
Yep. You're bringing up some vital points. The some of the signs are, like I said, quick involvement in a relationship. If someone that you meet feels as though they have to be around you 24/7 is a red flag. Some of the language that is used. I've never been loved like this before ever in my life, and I need you. And other things are, don't ever leave me or else I'll kill myself. Abusers use those type of statements to control the other person so that the other person will stay in their lives. Um, and if those things don't work, that's when it becomes a little more aggressive. Um,
So basically, they play with your emotions, or maybe they're not
oh,
playing with your
absolutely. There's
emotions.
an emotional abuse, and
But they
those are
don't
some of
know
the,
that they're doing it, right?
exactly. An abuser knows exactly what to do to control another person because they've done it before, most likely. You had mentioned something about a relationship when women shouldn't just walk away. That is vital too. A woman should not ever just walk away from an abuser, because most likely, if you turn your back on someone who's abusing you, that makes you even more vulnerable. Most women that are murdered in domestic violence are murdered when they turn their back on their abuser, to leave, to run away, to get out of the situation. But there has to be a safety plan. If there's a woman that wants to leave an abusive relationship, she should seek someone who can talk to her about a safety plan. And the safety plan will hopefully be followed to get you out of that situation safely, when, how, and everything. Any other questions that you may have when you talk to an advocate about getting out of that relationship, because safety planning is the best way to get out, the safest way to get out, and
What
especially if you have
can you
kids.
give some examples? Like, what's some safe plans to, if you can't just rush out of a relationship, what some methods or things that you should do to gradually get out the relationship?
Okay. Like I said, every woman that's involved in domestic violence has situations that they have to deal with. And again, that's when you talk to an advocate that can help you safety plan, you need to bring those to that advocate's attention. Some women may live in an apartment building. Some women may live in the country, in rural areas. Someone may live in the city, in a house. All those things are important when you safety plan. Secondly, safety planning means to have all your important papers in one a specific place. I always suggest an accordion folder to put all your papers, insurance papers, birth certificates, social security cards, doctor shot records, and things like that. So that if you have to leave in a hurry, you can just grab that folder or that place where all the papers are stored, and not have to look for anything. The next
Okay,
thing that, mhm.
okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, because I hope I can remember. Go ahead what
Yeah,
you're
ask your
saying. That I'm
ask,
sorry.
ask your question. Ask the
Um,
question.
I mean, that sounds really good, having all your papers and stuff. That's good. But when you've been in, if you say that you never want to provoke them or get them, worked up while you're trying to
Mhm.
get up out of there, so do I need to have like a girlfriend or someplace else so I can go where I do feel safe? And then you don't know
Yeah.
everybody's, whoever deals with domestic violence may not, there's different levels. Some people maybe it's not as severe yet, but they don't want to
Mhm.
take it to that plateau.
Mhm.
But I mean, but I know there has to be other things in plan too, if you just don't want to say, look, I'm leaving you.
No, no,
Yeah.
you don't want to say that to an abuser. Never. Because that is I don't want to use the word provoke, because you don't have to provoke an abuser. An abuser will abuse because of their own thoughts and actions. Not It has nothing to do with the victim. As far as when an abuser will abuse. So no, women don't provoke their abuser. And some women may think that, oh, I didn't cook the meal that he wanted, or I wasn't home on time. But those things are normal things that happen in a regular relationship. And you don't have to be abused because you didn't do what the abuser thought. But if they're an abuser, they will get after you for those kind of things, because they're just excuses
Or
to be
and
an
if it's
abuser.
dealing with anger, if they have anger issues, then or they had a bad day at work, or they're coming home and like we joke around like they kicked the dog, whatever.
Yeah,
But
and
so they take
actually,
their anger out on family. I don't know. I'm just
kicking the dog is a sign of an abuser. People will be tired. People get irritated. People get
yeah,
frustrated. But abuse is a little different. It's taking it to a whole different level. Because we all
yeah,
we all have days when they're not so good. We all become
yeah,
frustrated. Traffic can cause us to be frustrated.
yeah.
People on our job can cause us to be
Say that.
frustrated. It's a lot of different things. Waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
But
Learning a
an
new job.
abuser,
No, anyway.
yeah, abuser doesn't need an excuse.
Okay.
And I want to get back to safety planning right quick.
Yeah.
Something you said
Yes,
was
sir.
vital. A lot of victims have a tendency to not talk about the abuse. It is important to at least have one person in your life that you can totally trust 100%, that knows what's going on, and that in the planning of safety, maybe that one person can hold on to some things that you may not be able to carry out the house in front of an abuser. And it can be,
Okay.
most times to escape should not be during an argument. It should be when
Right.
things are pretty calm. A victim may be able to say that, I'm going to the grocery store, I'll be right back.
Right.
um, the kids are just dying to go to the grocery store with me, so I'm going to take them with me. That's a time of escape. Or if the victim has a job, they may not show up on their job that particular day because they have tried, made this plan to escape from their abuser during hours of work. And there's many ways to, and it does, like I said, depend on the victim, where the victim lives. Um, a lot of different issues are important to consider when safety planning. That's why it should be talked through with an advisor, with an advocate, or someone who understands what it takes to safety plan. A lot of times, victims have to leave cell phones behind and buy a cell phone that is, they call them burners, but so they can't be tracked. Um, uh, what else? Oh, they may need transportation. A lot of times victims don't know how to drive. And if they're in rural areas, they may not have access to adequate transportation. And all those things have to be considered in safety planning. And it is best to talk to someone who understands. The other thing about domestic violence is not always anger that ignites an abuser. An abuser does not have to have a reason to abuse. They just are abusers, and they take out a lot of frustration in their own personal lives, whether it is from something that happened today. It could have been something that happened yesterday. Some of the men that I talk to blame all women for their behavior, and all women are not involved in their behavior or their lives, but they have come to the point in their lives where they figure all women are bad, or all women will mess around on them in a relationship. And it's the
Did it stem
abuser.
from their childhood? I know you said earlier it's things that they've experienced. It could be a relationship with their parents or maybe with their moms. Maybe they didn't have good relationships with their mothers. Does
all
it have
all
anything to
that
do with
might be
that?
part of someone becoming an abuser, but we can't blame the victim for what the abuser does. So,
Right.
a victim is just a victim. The abuse of an abuser, whether they became an abuser as an adult or learned that behavior as a child. Um, a lot of times when kids learn that behavior, and it is a learned behavior, I've had men that tell me all the time that they thought that they inherited that behavior from their fathers, but that's not true. It's a learned behavior. Um, that in learning that behavior, again, because it is a learned behavior, it can be unlearned. Some people
Okay.
want to unlearn it, and some people don't. The last
Wow.
client that the oldest client rather that I've had was a 91-year-old man.
Wow.
I've had a man that was 85, and we're still abusers. So it depends on the abuser, and we should lay more of the responsibility for the actions on the abuser and not the victim. So a lot of people think, well, why don't she just stop treating him that way? Well, why don't he just stop abusing?
Or
Um,
they tell you, like, why don't you just get out that relationship? If it's that bad, then you need to just go. And sometimes it's not all like you said. Sometimes children are involved. So, like you said, you got to formulate some kind of plan.
exactly. And that's stated like people think if a woman just leaves, most likely it's a woman that's victimized. Just leave, everything will be over. That is not true. Most times it causes more problems because now the abuser want to know where is the victim. They will stalk them. They will follow them. They will find them. And they have already threatened, if you ever leave me, I'll find you. I don't care where you hide. And the abuser mean it. So there's a lot of abusers that have moved on in their lives with someone else and is still trying to abuse the person that they were with prior to that.
The previous relationship.
If it was
Okay.
that easy, I wouldn't have a job.
That's
It
crazy.
really does cause more problems. Abusers
So
are
you're saying
abusers.
they're already in a relationship,
They can be,
but they're
yes,
going after the person they was involved with in the past.
yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
I deal with that all the time. And the sad part is that the person that they're still trying to stalk and abuse, they're not doing anything. They're trying to move on in their own personal lives. But abuser uses children to manipulate them. They use anything that they possibly can. If we pay attention to what stated in the news, if we uh, understand what domestic violence is, we can hear it in the news. I just looked at the news not too long ago because I don't look at the news that often. But it was
Yeah.
this lady was on her job. This man who she got away from continued to stalk her, went to her job and shot her. And that happens a lot too. They stalk them, they follow them, and then
Mm.
um, permanent
That's
control is
sad.
when the victim is dead. So now you can't talk to anybody. Now you can't go anywhere. Now you can't do anything. So that's permanent control. So yes, that's what happens when victims are murdered. In the United States, between 1,500 and 5,000 women die annually because of domestic violence. One out of every third woman in the United States is involved in a violent relationship. Every 45
That's,
seconds,
you said 1 out of 3?
one out of three. Some statistics say one out of four, but one out of three, one out of four is way too
That's really
many.
small. That
It's
is.
many.
I
Um,
mean, when I hear stuff like that, like you almost do you want to even be in a relationship? I'm sorry, but
that's a good question because once a
I
lot of
mean, because I
victims
feel
get
like you'll
out, they
spend,
don't.
especially you'll spend the rest of your life guarded. You'll spend the rest of your life like, God, no, I'm not sure if I trust in any.
And
I'm
it
sorry.
happens. It happens. And the thing is that healing has to happen because victims of domestic violence have been injured emotionally, psychologically, some physically, mentally, sexually, and all those injuries need to heal. Even though we don't see um, uh, or not be able to identify some of the injuries that have taken place, they're still there. And they victims of domestic violence need to take time between relationships to heal if they've been abused. Now we see a injury on the outside of our body, and we're
Yep.
quick to find some type of remedy,
Go
some
to the
type of
doctor.
healing process, because we've discovered that the sooner we find healing or the healing process for an injury, the better the probability that we will be restored to the place
Right.
prior to the injury. But
But a lot of people don't want to deal with mental health. That's to me going into the mental health as far as getting help, getting counseling, getting help so we can heal from the inside
exactly.
out.
Hmm.
A lot of us don't tend to want to go. I mean, we're ashamed, like, oh wow, you're going to see, a psych or a shrink or somebody, but and I'm saying that not only for women, but for men too, because if
Hmm.
you are an abuser and you know that you're an abuser, then maybe you might need to go and get some help too
Okay.
before it gets really severe or you wind up in jail or you didn't bust up, some other person or ran away from you because of some craziness or
Well, most
um
most of the men that I work with are not quick to say, "I've been an abuser and I need help."
well,
um,
yeah, that's true. I mean, who wants to be
Most
on that?
likely, abusers blame
Yeah,
their
I mean
behavior on the
that's
victims.
true. That's a good point.
If they did, I mean, maybe it could help eliminate domestic violence. And there are men out there that are working in this field that try to help in eliminating domestic violence. But October is
But
Domestic Violence Month, Awareness Month. This is
oh, I did
still
not
received.
know that.
Well,
October
yes,
is? I did
October
not
is,
know that either.
yep, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I have on a purple shirt because purple is the color that represents domestic
I didn't
violence.
know that. Do
This
I have
month,
anything purple? I don't have anything purple, but I don't know if I did. But was another question I had for you. Okay, Etta. Okay, I hate that when it leaves me. um. Oh, I know what it was. The
mhm,
men that you've had to counsel, because I think you counsel them and for anger management, right?
correct.
But you're not getting men that's volunteering, like, oh, I have an anger issue. No, it usually happens when they then did something and took them to law, to court, and now they
Exactly.
find themselves sitting into a class that they got to go to, probably don't want to be at. But it
Exactly.
would be nice if people can acknowledge, like, I do have some anger issues and I need anger management. But I think a lot of it, it's not just the men, because I think we as women sometimes we feel ashamed on our end to have to say like, well, I was in this relationship and they was smacking me around or something, because nobody really wants to confess to that either.
Mhm.
So I
You're
think it's
absolutely
on both
right.
ends.
It is not to the same degree, but it is on both ends. Most victims are ashamed to say that the man that I love, that I'm living with, that I, eat with, talk to, have kids
Yeah.
by, is actually physically, abusing me. Um, Most men will not say, "Okay, I'm an abuser and I need help." No, if they're the abusers. A lot of the men that I work with will blame their behavior on the victim. Well, if she had to just fix my breakfast like I told her to, or if she had to just come back like she should have, I wouldn't have had to hit her. And a lot of times we as victims believe that. But that's
Yeah.
some of the excuses that I hear from abusers. It's very, very extremely rare that I have someone that is a client of mine that says, "You know what? I'm an abuser and I need help." That's rare. Um,
Okay.
and victims, one of the reasons we have to speak out, because victims are fearful. Fear is the number one reason why victims stay in abusive relationships, because they're afraid to leave. They're afraid, okay, where am I going to go? They're afraid because of all the threats that's been made against them. I'll kill you if you leave me. I'll find you. I don't care where you hide. And those things become real in a victim's mind. And we call it, I call it invisible chains that's keeping them in that relationship, because someone that's never been abused, it's easy for them to say, "Why don't you just leave?" Well, like I said, most women that leave without a plan are the ones that are basically murdered. And
Or maybe in the hospital.
another thing is that the largest homeless population are women who have left abusive
I
relationships,
did
don't
not
have
know
the
that either.
finances, don't have the
Wow.
finances, don't have anywhere to go. Shelters are in almost, well, I think in every state in the United States that will try to help victims of domestic violence, but shelters are always full, always um, at capacity. But shelters are very helpful. They can help with some shelters, I'll say, the ones that I know of in Ohio, are
Mhm.
very helpful with victims of domestic violence and housing them, even if they have children, and some will house them if they have pets. So that's the shelter in the state of Ohio and the area that I live in. We now accept pets in the
Mm.
shelter.
I have Miss Ursula on. She's watching our live chat. She says that was my mom, my mother-in-law. Her husband abused her, and that was a what was that? Back in the 40s, and she told, but no one helped her, so she stayed.
Yes,
Yeah, her
that
mother-in-law. Yeah,
the help.
her mother-in-law was abused.
Yeah,
Thank you, Miss
and
Ursula, for sharing that. Okay, go
that's
ahead.
a
I'm
vital
sorry.
point too, because actual help didn't really start until the 70s.
Wow.
And like I said, they were coming up with laws that didn't really help victims, but we became more aware that, it's not the victim's fault that she's being beat up. She did provoke him. She didn't ask to be beat. She didn't. No one likes to be beat, but the court systems and different systems in our United States of America begin to realize that women were victims, and they didn't provoke. And so actual research and laws started to become visible and utilized in the late 70s. And we know that in the early 1993, our president, Joe Biden, actually started the VAWA Victims um, Against that's Violence Against Women Act. I'm sorry, Violence Against Women Act did not become a law until the 1994. So our president was the one to push laws to help keep women safe in violent relationships,
Wow.
and that happened. He first introduced it to the government or the Senate in 1993, which it didn't pass in 93, but it did pass in 94. So we have that. That provides money for shelters, for victim advocates, for helping women to stay safe in violent relationships. And I thank you, Joe
Let me
Biden.
ask you. Let me ask you this, Etta, because now it has me thinking: if women are being victimized in their homes through violence, sexual and finance and emotional abuse, then if you've got children in your home, do you know the statistics, or is there, because I'm thinking if a man has some issues or problems with his anger, that doesn't just stop at the wife or the girlfriend, right? That
That's correct.
could segue into the child, right?
Um, 65 to 70% of children are abused in abusive homes. If they have an abusive father that abuses their mother, number one, just seeing that is abusive to children. Hearing that is abusive to children. But 65 to 70% of men that abuse their mother or their significant other that has children, because a lot of times the children are not their biological children, but they will abuse biological children and children of the mother of this of and the girlfriend that has children that are not his biological children. 65 per 70% of those children are abused also. So even just watching it or hearing it is abusive. It's psychologically abusive to the children, and it's hurtful. Women that are pregnant is another big issue. That are women that are being abused. A lot of time, abusers don't want children and don't want to be bothered with children. And when the women become pregnant, they become targets of the physical, psychological, verbal, sexual abuse, and that happens also.
Wow. Well, I don't even know what to say behind that because that's all. That's very informative.
Mhm.
I mean, you hear these things, and I'm sure that whoever is listening to this live chat, that if they've not ever experienced it, you have to know at least one person in your life, whether it's a family member or friend, who has been in an abusive relationship in some form or fashion.
Mhm.
And then it makes me think, when I hear that, I'm not going to keep you much longer because I know you got other stuff to do, Miss Etta. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Um, my It makes me think, like, when I hear that, if they are abusive in the home front, could these men be abusive, or could that lead into other things, like, I'm not saying serial rapists or stuff like that, but could it lead outside of the home, maybe with in some other way? I don't know. I don't know a lot about that, but I'm wondering, if you got that type of problems, or if you haven't resolved it, could it carry out into the world outside your family?
That is a good question, and most likely not, because they want everybody to think they're a good guy. And when a victim begins to say what's going on in the household, a lot of times people don't believe him.
People don't
I know
believe
this
them.
guy. He's a good guy. They call it
Yeah,
the Mr. Nice Guy image,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
people have a tendency not to believe victims or believe that victims are making it up to, make the abuser look bad when the abuse really is happening in the household. A lot of times when no one knows that the abuse is going on and kids are in school, a lot of times they may run and tell their teachers, and the teachers have to report it. They're mandated to report it. If Child Protective Services find out that abuse is going on in the home, they will get involved with helping the children to stay safe. A lot of the women that I talked to have been referred to me through Child Protective Services. A lot of the abusers that I talked to have been referred to me through the court system. So I work closely with prosecutors in the court system to um, talk to abusers that we feel may be able to be helped. Some abusers just are abusers and they don't want to change and they're not trying to
So
do
you're saying they're
anything
never
to
going to
change.
change, is what you're saying.
Some don't change. And
So
it's nothing that.
now, if they, I guess I'm saying this because, again, there's no way that you can really spot an abuser. They don't. Everybody don't wear signs on them. I do this. I do that. This is the kind of person that I am. So if we're going to enter into a relationship, and I know I said that jokingly, but it's very serious. And I know on another video, YouTube channel that I watch, um, his name is Brent. He has a YouTube channel, Road Runner 89, and actually sometimes he talks about that because, well, his channel is basically interracial relationships, but basically here lately he's been talking about protecting the women, because women, there was a situation, and I don't know if you heard about it, Etta, but there was a situation where this girl was raped on a train, on a
Mm,
not some kind of train, a transportation train or whatever. And what, I was one of those big cities, and people was around, but nobody really did. I think one person, a lady, called in. I didn't get the whole story. He talked about a little bit. I probably should do some more research on it, but I'm thinking, going back to, a lot of people don't believe you if you're saying that this is happening, because people on the outside, they may know this person and say, well, he's always been nice, or he's never come
mhm.
across that way, or he wouldn't do anything like that. But people don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Exactly.
That's one
Exactly.
of the problems right there. So society, we got to tend to, you just talking.
hmm And that's why we have to speak out. That's why it's so important that victims become people who will voice what is going on, and that is becoming more of more normal for victims in domestic violence to speak out. It, like you said earlier, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of ways that women don't want to get their abuser in trouble. So they won't tell the truth, or they won't say it's going on, or they
Yeah.
will just say,
Yeah.
oh, make up excuses. I did. When I was involved in domestic violence, I didn't want my husband arrested. I didn't want to see him in jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime I had to go
But
to
we're always trying to look out for the other person. We're not always looking out for ourselves. We're trying to protect or look out for the, which is, it's kind of weird when you think about it, because I'm thinking, are they really looking out for you? But we're looking out for them.
And it's not so much looking out for them, it's actually protecting ourselves, because if we tell
But
the
maybe out
truth
of
to
fear
them,
too.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
fear.
not
Like I
the
said,
hurt.
fear is the number one reason why women stay. Fear is the number one reason why people leave, women leave. But the fear is so great, we're afraid to tell it. We're afraid to tell the truth, because he's already told us what he'll do to us if, if we talk about it, tell somebody about it. What I would My life goal is to allow every woman to understand the dynamics of domestic violence by educating themselves, whether they're in the relationship that is violent or not. Because, like you said earlier, we may know someone, we may have a coworker, somebody in our family, somebody that we just know, or see, a neighbor or anybody. If a neighbor thinks that a neighbor is being violated, call the police. Let the police know. Help that woman. She may be in a position where she cannot contact someone to help her, or no one may be able to get close to her, because he is told her, if your sister comes over here or your mother comes over here, I'll kill them too. So it's a lot of reasons why victims are unable to speak out or too afraid to speak out. But those that are around that victim, neighbors, co-workers, students that are in college. There's a lot of students in college that are violated. There's a lot of teenagers that are violated. And a lot of times we don't speak out because of fear. So as the more we educate ourselves about domestic violence, the more we understand it, the more we can be advocates in our own rights for those that are violated by domestic violence.
There's something else was you. I want to, or can't even think of it now. Oh wow, slipped my mind.
Mhm.
But this is a really serious matter, and this is not something to take lightly. This actually does go on. We know
Mhm.
this to be true. And you just said
Mhm.
earlier on, if you're saying 1 out of 3, even 1 out of 4, that's too many. That's way too
Mhm.
many. And it makes it fearful. I mean, not that every person is bad, but it makes you, and then if you've ever been in any type of uh, physical or type of relationship that's been physical in a bad way, it does make you very apprehensive as far as getting in. I mean, and then I know I'm jumping around, but it makes you apprehensive as far as jumping into a relationship, because I think you're more guarded, because a woman who's been victimized, you already feel traumatized in a way. And if you're operating out of fear coming out of one relationship, then you're probably thinking, do I even want to get in any relationship? Or
Exactly.
um,
And
and
that's
then
why I
you
say,
hopefully find someone who can be, that's going to be good, and and hopefully understand what you've been through. Um, but if you got a lot of people out here that's on the opposite side of the fence, and I don't want to walk out of one relationship into another one. That's,
what
you don't
what I
want to be
always
in that type
advise,
of situation either. So
exactly. What I always advise is to heal. That person has been violated, been physically, psychologically, emotionally, sexually abused. And of course, we don't want to walk back into any of that. Number one, learn the red flags. And number two, you got to know what you really want in a relationship. Do you just want a
right,
man, or do you want a good
right,
man, with character, values, um,
right,
and same ideologies, thought processes? If that's what you want, you got to know what you want. And how do you know what you
right,
want? Is knowing who you are as a human being.
right.
The
And
one
that's
thing
where
that
the
I
healing
found out,
begins.
yes, one thing I found out is in knowing myself, I begin to understand what I really wanted and needed in a relationship. A lot of times
Right,
we don't. We just, sometimes we're just happy that somebody likes us. We're just happy that we're in a relationship. Um,
yeah,
But we have to know ourselves. We have to love ourselves. We have to appreciate ourselves. We have to value ourselves. Most women who've been through violence, their esteem is gone. They have low self-esteem. The values that they have are almost watered down. And we have to really build that stuff back up. We have to value ourselves, love ourselves, know who we are, know what we want
Yeah.
out of life. And
Yeah.
those things become very valuable when we look for a partner or when we are in the position to accept someone as a partner. So those are
Exactly.
vital. And I talk to women about that, knowing who
Exactly.
you are and your values. Value yourself.
Yeah. And
Um,
rebuilding that up in them. Or well, maybe in some cases, I want to venture to say that they didn't have it to begin with, that we didn't value ourselves. I think I spoke on that in one of my videos, because especially for the young ladies and the honest, that's going into a whole nother segment, but basically, especially if you can build, if you can find that in your the value and loving yourself at a younger age. I think when you get older, if you do see this, I mean, you're more aware of the signs, or maybe if you're not, it's like immediately you're quicker to pick up on it and get the heck up out of there. I think when you don't know who you are and you don't value yourself, that maybe, like you said, you're just so needy. I want to be loved, or this feels good at the moment. He's saying all the right things that, yeah, okay. So we step right on into that.
well, I have to say that if that was 100%, again, I wouldn't have a job. It's a lot of women who value themselves, who are strong, who are uh, educated professionals, and they can still become victims of domestic violence because
Okay.
the weight should not be on the victim, but on the abuser. Um, and that's, it's just so happened. I use Rihanna as an example. She was a movie star. She was, famous. She was a strong woman, all those things, and
So
was
about
still
you
beat.
about Rihanna, the singer, the not rapper, she's the one that sings.
She was beat up by Chris Brown.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so I'm sure she valued herself. She was famous. She had all the stuff going for herself, but he beat her up. So she can't take, I mean, we can't blame her for being beat up. We have to blame the person who beat her up. We're walking down the street, minding our own business, just taking a walk, and somebody jump out from the bushes and hit us upside the head with a brick, knock us out, ambulance come and take us to the hospital. Are they going to blame us for being a victim of what somebody else did? No, it wasn't our fault. We were just walking down the street and somebody jumped out from the bushes and hit us. So we have to find that person that violated us and blame them and find justice in that. Same with domestic violence. Victims don't ask to be beat up. They're not in the relationship for that. And a lot of times, again, we're ignorant to the signs of an abuser,
Yeah.
and most likely they're not going to show those signs in the beginning.
Yeah.
So most
Which is why a
abusers,
lot of people going back again in society. A lot of people don't believe it because they're figuring they know this person and they would never do anything like
exactly,
that. But again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. That's the sad part. And the sad part is that family members don't want to believe it. Family members don't want to believe it on the outside because they think, well, no, he's a good person, or
yeah,
he would never do anything like that. How would you know? You didn't live with them.
right. And a
I'm
lot of times
sorry.
that does happen. That's good. What you're saying is great, because that's what happened a lot of time. Family members don't understand that, yes, your son or your daughter can be violent.
Yeah,
And they don't believe it. And just because they don't believe it doesn't mean it's not happening. It does happen. And a
yeah,
lot of times family members don't believe it because they know that person is a good person. And you know what?
yeah.
Like I said, a lot of abusers do act like good people in front of everybody else. It's just when they're at home behind closed doors, um, that's when they begin to abuse that one person. A lot of abusers they only abuse that person that they're dating. I mean, they're not abusing their mom or dad or friends or people in
Yes.
society. It's that one
That's
person.
crazy. That's crazy. Okay,
Hmm.
just even hear that. So you're saying they only just target just the love of their life or whatever that person is. I don't know. Is it your love, or is it somebody that you can just kind of? put your thumb down on. Is it again control? That's what it is. It's about control.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to
So
control
it's
that
not
person.
love, it's control
It's
or
control.
power,
Power
I
and
guess. I
control.
don't
It's
know.
power
Yeah,
and control.
yeah.
And because there are some women who are never hit, but because of all the other stuff, the passive abusiveness, the financial situation where they don't have access to any finances, the abuser won't allow them to work, won't allow them to have any control over the money. Um, they're basically stuck in the situation. They're married to a person or might be living with a person. That person may not have ever hit them physically, but they're doing everything else, like um, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and all those things are going on. And like I said, it's all um, is implemented to instill so much fear in that victim. It's just like a mouse in the jungle. Elephant can be a whole mouth, or a lion can be a whole mouth from that little mouse. But if they hear that roar, they become paralyzed and even stuck in that situation till they pass away, till they die. It's sort of the same way with victims. When they hear that voice and hear those words, they get stuck, they get paralyzed in that situation because they believe, and they have been made to believe, the abuser. So again, like I said, as a victim, I have been a victim of domestic violence, and was for about 15 years before I realized, what, I'm not doing this anymore. And then I had to realize, who is Etta? What are my characteristics? What are my values? What do I value? What do I love about myself? I had to find those things out. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? What are my potentials? What are my strengths? And I had to learn myself before I began to be able to be strengthened,
So
psychologically,
this is very
emotionally.
personal, Etta, to you because you've been there. I
Right.
mean, even though your career lined up or wound up in the area for domestic violence, but you lived it. So
Exactly.
and I'm pretty sure that you probably have had to share that story with a lot of victims or people that you counsel, so that you help get them out of their, you don't have to stay in this.
Right. When I have
Yeah,
victims, a lot of times in the beginning, they think, well, she's sitting in that chair. She thinks she knows everything, because I have book knowledge and personal knowledge now. But
yeah.
then when I share my story, it changes the whole atmosphere. And then we can talk as
Demeanor, probably the demeanor of them, like, okay, I can be more open with you
exactly,
and honest,
exactly.
because basically that's what it is.
Hmm. And you're right. They become more open, more honest, because I understand where they're coming from. A lot of people don't. And like I said, a lot of
Yeah.
people blame the victim. When I was involved in domestic violence, which was in the 70s and 80s, again,
Oh,
I didn't have the advantage of what's out there right now. So people were telling me, what are you doing to set him off? Like, what are you doing to keep him beating you up?
wow.
Or just leave, and told me all the things that
Oh,
continue
yeah.
to keep me beat up. Because I go home, encouraged by the conversations I've had with some other women,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and tried to be strong and tried to fight back. And I lost all the fights. It just didn't work
Mm,
for me. And I know it doesn't work for a lot of women who try to fight their abusers. Most likely, women are a little weaker physically. Men are stronger physically. They're made to be stronger. So,
mm-hmm.
not saying that all women are weaker physically, but most likely most women are. And they end up, trying to fight. And most women are in a fight to defend themselves, not as the
Yeah.
aggressors, just trying to defend themselves. So yeah, when I was told, why you keep letting him treat you like that, I'm like, I'm not letting him treat me like this. I'm trying to get out of this. I'm trying to get away from this. I'm trying to get him out of my life. But men that were abusing me were like leeches and then parasites, and it was no,
Yeah.
it's not that
But I
easy.
also think that they have a way of making you feel like, well, that they love you. I think that they know how to turn it around and make it feel like, um, I'm sorry that I did that, and make you and make you and cause you to stay. Because I think a lot of, you were saying earlier about, we protect them to keep them out of trouble, but I think a lot of times we do it because we feel that Well, yeah, they hit me, but they love me. I know you've heard that.
Oh, yes. Actually, a lot of times in court, when women say things like that, the judge may say, "There's a young lady I need for you to speak with. Her name is Miss Caver. She has some things that she can share with you." It happens.
Yeah.
And a lot of times women do it for their own protection. So they feel that the abuser has said, "I'm in jail because of you." No, the abuser's in jail because of their actions against the
Yeah, but
victim.
they make the victim
But
feel bad
but
though.
yes,
Like,
they
yeah,
make the
because of
victim
you,
feel
this is
like
wrong. Mhm.
the victim feel like the victim has put them in jail, or the victim doesn't want to say anything bad against them because they're hoping that the abuser will appreciate the fact that the victim didn't tell everything, or the victim was there to defend the abuser, or the victim was there to say good words. Well, Your Honor, this is the first time he ever done anything like that, and it was really my fault, or things like that. The court system, the judge, prosecutor, advocates in the courts know that that's not the truth.
Well, I'm sure you probably heard all because you've been doing this for some years. I
Yeah,
remember you've been doing this for a while.
about 20 years now. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a long time.
yeah. So I've seen um, from mild, I guess you could call it mild abuse. I don't know what mild abuse may be. A person that's
Right.
been in a relationship maybe a couple of months and find out that they're with an abuser until, like I said, years of marriage, 73, 75 years of marriage, and the woman is still being abused. One case some years ago, the couple was in their 80s and he hit his wife. She's unconscious, was in a nursing home. And he actually went to the nursing home to abuse her some more. And the
Oh
court
boy.
system had to talk to him like, what part of don't hit her don't you understand?
Oh
And they had a
my.
protection order to keep him out of the nursing home to protect this lady. And they both were in their 80s. Now, one of the things that can be utilized is protection orders, and it's obtained through the court system, the legal criminal court systems, or the civil court. Victims that are trying to escape their abuser should, again, talk to an advocate about what's available to help them to stay safe. Civil protection orders, criminal protection orders are issued when domestic violence is in the criminal court system, but those protections go away when the case is over. But a civil protection order is good basically in every state of the United States up to 5 years. Um, if a victim really wants to get away and trying to escape, probably found a house or someone who can house them safely, should pursue a civil protection order that the
And
abuser
you
has to.
probably have to quit your job. I think in situations like that, you would have to quit your job and really just change just
If it's
everything.
that
I'm
bad,
assuming for one moment too, Etta. Etta, Miss Ursula has been on here. I wanted to ask her, and please forgive me, Miss Ursula. Do you have any questions that
yeah.
you would like to ask, Etta? I didn't. I should have said that earlier on because you've been watching us for a while,
Mhm.
and I don't know if there's anybody else that's out there that want to get on the live chat. You're welcome to if you would like to.
Mhm.
Just hit the live chat button, or just may just want to listen. But Miss Ursula, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? I don't know if you did already, or just let me know. I'm trying to glance over here because I got the computer and the
Excuse me.
laptop going. So, but anyway, go on, and if she does, I'll try to keep an eye on her if she has anything. Okay, I'm sorry, Miss Etta, you were saying.
That a victim should pursue
Okay.
a protection order.
She said she doesn't right now, so that's we're good.
Okay.
Go on.
I last year I had a client from Hawaii, and I asked, "How in the world did you get to this part of Ohio from Hawaii?" And she said that her fiance saw that Ohio had a lot of job opportunities, and so they came to the state of Ohio from Hawaii. And
Wow, that's Interesting.
That is interesting.
Hawaii to Ohio. That's yeah. Okay. I could think
Like
maybe
I think,
California, Florida, but okay, okay, whatever. Go on.
and I shared my story with her and talked to her about some things. She was in total denial about being a victim of domestic violence,
Mm,
but she notified people in Hawaii, her family in Hawaii, and let them know she was in Ohio. And the truth is that she actually gave me her number of her. She gave me her mother's number, and her mother and I talked, and they were able to send a family member like immediately to Ohio and set up this plan that the cousin was coming to visit her in Ohio, but we had
yeah,
notified the police. We had notified people that would help protect her. The police actually escorted the cousin from Hawaii to this young lady's house. The young lady saw her cousin and was so happy. She ran out of the house, and it was a safe run out of the house, ran into the
yeah.
arms of her cousin, and they grabbed her. Police grabbed her, and they all took her. A few hours later, they were on a plane back to Hawaii, and that was their safety
Wow.
plan.
So that was her way to get back home.
Yes, that was her safety plan. They called me at the
Man,
airport. Yeah, they called me
they
at the
really had to
airport.
they had to strategize that one.
Actually, that was
That's
the safety
big.
plan. That's what I said. Every woman has a different situation. It's say what safety plan will help one may not be the safety plan that can help
Right.
somebody else.
That's true. That
And this
is
was her
true.
safety plan. So the cousin came immediately, flew here. Uh, the plan was she was just going to see her cousin, but they had involved the police and everybody, and they grabbed her, went straight to the airport, called me from
That's
the
very
airport,
big.
and
That's
I was so
big.
glad she was on her way home. Yes.
That's big.
Hmm.
Did she stay in contact with you at all? Do you ever hear from her, or was that the end of it?
I did in the beginning, and actually, she called my work phone, and I saved those conversations. When I didn't answer, when she called and she left messages, I still have them on my phone right now today, because it
Wow.
was one of those issues where the safety planning was to get her back to Hawaii, and it worked. And I sometimes I allow victims to listen to that voicemail to let them know that it can happen. You just have to plan, and make sure that the plan is a good plan and work the plan, and hopefully the plan works.
Yeah.
Um, and she was in total denial the whole time she sat in my office. She said he was not an abuser. She loved him. He loved her. They just moved to Ohio so he could get a job. And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm thinking this young lady needs help.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. As far as I know, as a matter of fact, since she said that, I think I'll call the number that I have for her and see if it's still a good number and ask her how she's doing.
That's good. Very good. Well, on that note, because I know we've been on for a while, and I thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it a lot. I hope that the listeners who are listening to this or know of anyone who is dealing with domestic violence, something may have been said to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing before we end, I know you had said it earlier, but can you uh, tell people where they could possibly go once again if they are in this type of situation or they know of someone that's in this type of situation? Who could they go to? Who do they get in contact with in their states? Or because everybody may not be here in Ohio, so what are some things that they need to do? Who can they contact?
There is a national hotline number. I do not know that number right off the top of my head, but you can Google, and there will be sites that will first ask you or mention to you in that site, if you do not feel safe, it has a button that you can click on that will allow that site to disappear, and it will not show up in the history. So if an abuser runs behind you to try to see what site you were looking at, it will not show up, but it
Oh,
will
good.
have a national hotline number on there. Dial that national hotline number to connect you to the number that you can reach someone in your state. Um, the thing is, most all states have help for victims of domestic violence in safe houses, the Women's Why. As a matter of fact, this year I was nominated as Outstanding Woman of the Year.
All right.
Achievement, I'm
Very
sorry,
good.
Outstanding
I
Woman
think
of
I
Achievement.
announced that on one of my I think I announced that on one of my videos. Yeah.
Which was a
That's
great honor.
awesome.
Yeah, which was a great honor to me because of the work I do with victims of domestic violence. So the Women's Why is a good help. There may be some shelters in your area that you may not know of. I think that might be accomplished by Googling safe houses, shelters. Most advocates in every criminal court that offer advocates will be able to help in this situation. You can always ask them questions. Even if you're not in a bad situation and you know someone that is, please try to find information. I think education and information is the most vital tool that we can use to help victims in domestic violence. That's why I'm such an advocate about women learning about domestic violence. If you are not a victim, at least you are become equipped to help someone who may be a victim. If you know
Yeah.
someone who's a victim and they seem to try to avoid you, don't let that stop you from helping the victim. Always be available. Keep yourself safe now. Stay safe yourself, but have that
How do we
information.
know the signs? Is there any way for us to even pick up on the signs for women who may be victimized?
Yes.
There's probably okay.
If there's a woman that has bruises and you ask about,
Well, you know the
you ask
obvious
them.
sign.
Yeah, that's an obvious sign. And you kind of feel like they're not telling you the truth. Because I used to use excuses like, oh, I fell, or I opened the door, hit myself in the face, or, if they constantly have physical bruises, you might want to ask them, what's going on. If they don't tell you the truth at first, don't worry about it, because that's the way we as victims are. We're afraid, we feel guilty. There's a lot of things going on. The reasons why we don't tell the truth in the beginning, but just hang in there with that young lady, and eventually they will tell you the truth about what's going on. The second thing is that if you notice that they don't have that much freedom, say their abuser picks them up from work, brings them to work, maybe even sit in the parking lot. Sometimes abusers do that when victims have jobs. They sit in the parking lot and watch them. That's a clue. If the abuser is constantly calling the victim, like if the victim's at work, at school or something, and constantly calling them or texting them, that's another clue. And you can ask subtle questions like, you know, is there anything that I can help you with, or you want to talk about? I just want to let you know that I'm available if you ever want to talk. Uh, and that's a good statement to use instead of accusing you, like, what's going on? I can tell something's going on in your relationship, but
Yes, you
just,
don't want to
you know,
do it. Yeah.
make yourself available. So those things are helpful. Again, Googling gives a lot of information. I have a packet that I pass out to the clients that I have, and it has in there signs to know if your friend is involved in a violent relationship. Those things you can Google and find out. And you can, as a individual, can learn those things or have those things in mind. So if you notice that a friend of yours might be a victim of domestic violence, you'll know what direction to send them in, that they can get help, and the help is out there. That's the main thing, that there is help, and there's people that out there that would direct you in that
That's
direction.
good.
Hmm.
It's good to know that help is out there.
Hmm.
So I hope to my listening audience here in the YouTube land that something was said today that was helpful, that was informative, beneficial. And if you know someone, or if you're in a situation like that, get some help and formulate a plan. Don't be foolish, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah. So Miss Etta, I call you Miss Etta. I'm trying to be professional, but anyway, Etta, I've
That's
known Etta for many, many years,
yeah.
guys. That's just what you know. She's a very dear friend. As a matter of
Hmm.
fact, she married my son and daughter-in-law. So yeah, we've been friends for a long time. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you guys know, but I think I mentioned before, she's also a minister as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So But Etta, thank you so very much again. Maybe perhaps I can get you back on to come back and visit me again, and we'll do this another time on
Yeah.
this. Take it a little
And
bit
yeah,
deeper.
and I hope that if someone is watching and they do have questions, that somehow they can get those questions to you so that we can answer them at another time. That would be
Okay,
great.
that would be good too. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
a good one. If anybody do have any questions or concerns, and I'll hold on to them. So if the next time we have another interview with Miss Etta Caver, you guys, we can address those questions and concerns that you may have. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much for coming by to visit. Yours truly, Miss Anita, and I hope you guys will come back again and visit me. And if you do like, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe and leave a comment. You guys take care and you have a good day. Bye bye.
Mhm. Mhm. Bye bye.